episode number 001.
I listen, I hear, I see, I love, and I know that I'm only the medium. So I hope I can pass on whatever I get and more to someone else somewhere.
Welcome to the Govcon Giants Podcast, federal contracting for people on the outside looking in. If you are here to learn how to win a piece of the pie without getting your face smashed in, then you've tuned in to the right place. Now, the giant that not only walks the walk, but talks the talk, your host, Eric Coffey.
So I have with me today Narjis Ali. He's the president and CEO of Sure Secure Solutions, an 8A woman-owned information technology security company. Founded in 2004, the company's core capabilities include cloud computing, cybersecurity, content management, and information management. She's received numerous awards dating back to 2012, and most recently the prestigious 2016 U.S. Small Business Administration and NASA Small Business Prime Contract of the Years 2016 and 2017. Narjis, welcome.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Eric. I'm delighted to be here with you.
Thank you. I'm happy to have you on today as well. So listen, first and foremost, tell us, how did you get started? What made you jump into business, especially as a woman and an immigrant?
Yeah, so I know we have limited time, and I'll try and be short with my answers. But it's an unusual starting because when you move from one place to the other and you're going through life changes, so that was something that made me move to the US and start my life over again. And what I knew best was how to do some software programming and development and architecture. So I was just looking for work around that, but I didn't immediately get to what I wanted. I was working I've set up a little medical transcription company and automated transcriptions for somebody. And then by word of mouth, got introduced to somebody in an IT company, started working for them for a couple of years. And then I'd been working on projects which had, security, cybersecurity kind of thing and web portals. So I noticed that a lot of people around me have their own companies, and for the last so many years that I'd moved here, I hadn't, thought about starting my own business. So it was actually my son-in-law who one day prompted me and said, you're doing very well in what you're doing. Why don't you start your own business? And I was like, what do I have to do? And we just went on to the SEC website and said, okay, let's register a company. So I just did that. And even then, it just took me a while to say, I've always been an entrepreneur in my life, because even in Pakistan, I did some projects which were not there before, like starting computer education in Pakistan, which for the first time, bringing IT into that field. I had my own company where I was doing business. So I said, why not, where I've moved now and made my country here in the US, I can also start business. It was just the fear of the unknown, I suppose, that made me take a few years to start it off. But once I was there, I was like, yeah, let's roll.
Wow. No, that's exciting. So, when I was reading, it says you came on the journey with 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
So you brought them over with you when you first came?
Yeah. So when I first came, it was me alone, and in a few months, my kids joined me one after the other because they were finishing their school year or whatever. And we had a pretty rough first years trying to get everything right and trying to, get them to the right schools and whatever. But the first few years were a rough ride. We just it was one of those things that I keep getting reminded of. When I was a child, I would stand by the seashore, and it was not close to where I lived. So we used to always visit once in a blue moon, go to a beach. And I used to remember standing there and the sand going from under my feet and remembering how it would make me fall and panic. But my mother and my sister were always there with me, and my mom would tell me to hold my sister's hand and just stand there and dig my feet deep into the ground and just stand, right? And that is what made me, even when I came here, went through some hardships, but I stood through that, and I realized that if you work hard and your intent is good and you're honest about things, things do have a way of working out. So it worked out for me. So it was beautiful to get to know the United States as my country that I call home now. But it took a little bit of settling. but it was probably the best move I'd ever made.
Wow. Wow. That's fantastic. And so when you got started, you said originally you were a subcontractor employee with Customs and Border Patrol?
That's correct. So technically, I was an employee with someone, and then when I started my own business, I had to make sure that the contracts I had with my employer also were honored to a certain time where I could flip over and become my own boss. So basically, it took a little while, but I continued after the first 2 years as my company with the same customer, that was the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Where it was one of the most exciting projects that I think anyone who's done that. And at that point, there were about 1,800 of us working to modernize the system. And I think it was one of the most exciting projects that anyone could have done here. So I'm lucky.
Wow. 1,800 people working on a single project?
Yes, it was one of those large contracts that was awarded to multiple companies working to modernize the trade system. And it was one of the most exciting things. And it's still continuing, but on the last leg. And, I worked on that for about 13 years.
Okay. And then you use that. Is that where you started? So you used that contract to get your experience in?
Yes, that was the first place that I started as Sure Secure Solutions, also. And then I kind of worked my way to getting more people on the company and then eventually getting my 8A in about 3-4 years later in 2010. So that was when it really dawned on me that I do have a company and I have some obligations to fulfill for the government. And,
Right.
I can take advantage of these things. But even that takes a while. So if I had to do it again today, I'd do it a little differently. But yes, that's where I started with U.S. Customs. And I guess I was a subcontractor in Department of Interior with another company where I found an opportunity. And because I couldn't bid on it with my quals, so I got another company and I worked with them in the Department of Interior on another contract. And then slowly and steadily, it grew on me as to, what the meaning of 8A is and what government contracting really is. It just takes a very long time to understand the landscape, by the way. So for anyone starting new business with the intent to work with the government, it's a whole different world. I mean, you have to know and you have to know how to navigate through the system.
So you said something interesting. You said that getting started with the 8A, it's another world and you would do some things differently. Can you talk to that? I know in one of the articles you said now, looking back and reflecting on your 2016 award, that one of the things you mentioned was working with other companies and getting mentors. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. So getting an 8A, it seems like the application had so many things that you had to fulfill, and only if you were, you were compliant with all the requirements in getting an 8A, you did that. And I know that I filled up my own application and I submitted it on December 23rd. And the reason I remember that, and I'm saying that, is that people who don't know, so I tried to get help and paid money for it, but eventually I just thought I just take the whole application and do it myself, and I did it. December 23rd, I submitted it. On the 8th of February, I got my 8A awarded. So it was just basically knowing what you're doing and submitting it, and I found the government to work with me to get me that 8A, and it just literally took 6 weeks for it to get awarded from the time of submission. In 2010, people said that was unheard of, but it happened, right? So yeah, and so the question you asked was about mentors and how do you do that. So I realized that at that point in time also, because I was new to the 8A world, I didn't know enough, though I attended briefings and whatever introduction sessions they had. I guess I needed to be I needed more education in how I can use it. So I thought at that time that it was the right thing to do was look for any 8A opportunity in FedBizOps or one of those search engines and just, bid on it.
Right.
But that was not the right approach. And there was nobody to guide me at that time. And I feel that today I can just hold somebody's hand and say, don't do that. You're wasting your time and resources and energy and money, of course, because at the end of the day, everything boils down to money. That's not the way to go. You have to first identify where you're going, what your skills are, what you want to focus on, and then just zoom in there. It'll take you much less time if you do a handful of opportunities that you think you want to go after, rather than just go after anything and everything that says 8A in it,
Right. No, I agree.
Yeah. So unfortunately, it was very late when I got some mentors, but today I'm working with a lot of small 8A firms that have just gotten their status, and I'm very happy to share my experiences and tell them, don't do this, and I wish somebody had done that with me, but I think it's my responsibility now to make sure that whatever I know, I can pass it on to a few. Maybe they will get the benefit of what I've learned, and that's all good.
No, that is excellent. I don't think it could have been said any better. A lot of people, it seems like, I guess there's a lot of consultants and people giving misinformation out there. And a lot of them are, like you said, they're telling them to get 8A, to have their SAM registration with a bunch of NACS codes, and then just go after everything that's out there. And I find that it leads to burnout. It leads to them being frustrated and burnt out. And like you said, at the same time, you're spending a lot of money and time, and other people's time's wasted on putting together numbers and putting together write-ups for things that you more than likely can't do.
Exactly. And also another thing I want to say over there is that, when you, unless you have money where you get investors who will put in their money and set up the infrastructure, a person like me who was starting from scratch, I did find a few partners that that came in with equity but we were very small and
Right.
We were organically funded. So we didn't have the luxury of, having 2 years to really do the groundwork. So we went in, running and the advantage I had was, which I feel till today, is the relationships that I built with my customers. And when I say customers, it just doesn't mean the customer who you're selling the product or services to. I'm talking about customer in way of the environment that allows you to be there and create those relationships with coworkers, colleagues, other companies, and the customer, right? And that's what is so important, where when you excel in something, people trust you, right?
No, I agree 100%. In fact, that brings me to a very good question. I noticed that you were able to, one of your first team members was a former astronaut.
Yes.
So that means you're really good at excelling at your environment. So tell me a little bit about that story. How were you able to nab a former astronaut on your team so early on when you were just getting started?
Yeah, so it's funny that people have noticed that Mike Lounge, who was John Michael Lounge, he was an astronaut. He did 3 missions, and he did 2 missions with Discovery. So he was in space a lot, and he got introduced to me through a friend who I was trying to rope into the business to say, hey, you know how to grow businesses. I know how to technically do stuff. Okay. So why don't you come work with me? And he said, well, I have another friend who's just retired from Boeing, and he was an astronaut, and he's looking to do something exciting. And I'm like, okay. So we met for happy hour one time, and Mike, by the end of it, I was trying to technically tell him, Mike, we do this, and here's security architecture, and this is cyber, and Mike just kept on, and he was like, okay. By the end of it, when we were paying the bill, he was like, okay, I'm sold, I'm your partner. I'm like, what? So that was so funny.
Wow.
But the horror was that Mike stayed with us for about a year, and he just left us without too much notice. Any notice, like 3 days, and he was gone. We didn't even realize that he was in such an advanced stage of cancer, and he passed away. That was probably the biggest loss I've had in this company. We worked hard on a proposal, and it was a very big one. And I think the day we submitted it, Mike went into hospital, and he was gone in 3 days. So he was the driver behind it, and I can never, ever forget him. I mean, he got us NASA, which he didn't directly get us NASA, but because he was an astronaut, my thing was NASA is someplace we must get to, and we
Yeah,
did.
of course. No, right. Absolutely. Yeah, he was. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good
But
story.
it's strange that he never played a role in us getting NASA directly, but because of him, there was this fascination with the
It's
agency,
a
and
vision to
yeah,
get to NASA.
we just went in. Yeah, that was a really nice time to have had. I'm very lucky to have a partner like him, even if it was short lived. But you have to say, okay, thank you for being in my life for that long.
Well, I'm sure he'd be proud knowing that you're the 2016 and 2017 award winner for NASA.
Oh my God, yeah,
Can
would he have been proud? Yeah, and it was just I mean, you just said that, and I didn't even think of that Mike would have been so proud when we got the award, right?
No,
To say,
I saw it right away. I mean, I'm feeling it, that he helped you get started, and then you're the 2016 and 2017 award winner.
yep. Thank you so much. Yes, appreciate that. And so that was one big horror story when we unexpectedly lost somebody that we were really depending on for all business development. And he was a great business development person, and we were just banking on him because my skills were more technical,
Right.
and his were more business oriented. So we were like, Mike, this was not the time to go, but it is what it is, and I think we're doing okay.
Yeah, no, well, it looks like you're doing pretty good. You've had your momentum and you continue to work well. So listen, this morning, actually, I was reading an article from another friend of mine who's a woman entrepreneur. And she says when she got started in business, and again, hers was a lot, was 30 years ago, but she said that, as a woman in construction, that originally she couldn't ask questions, because it would be seen as a sign of weakness. Did you ever have any negative experiences by being a woman entrepreneur, a woman CEO of an IT company?
So you know what? I actually, on the other hand, only have seen advantages, or maybe I don't look at the disadvantages.
No, that's even better.
Yeah, it's like my way of, looking at it is as a woman, I always got a little more, ears and respect than other people who may have started businesses like me did. And if you're good in what you do, and you can be trusted to deliver whatever it is, I found that as a woman, I probably had an edge over the men.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. No, that's a great story. No.
And also, you mentioned Pakistan. That's where I was born. That's where I was raised,
Right.
I spent most of my life there, and moving here has been a very pleasant experience. But at the same time, there could have been, I've been asked that, are you okay going back there to your country ever? Are you okay? Do you feel safe? And with all that, I've never felt that I was at a disadvantage because someone treated me differently. I think that's the greatness of the United States.
Wow. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. No, I feel the same way. People ask me the same question, and I say, I think because of my color of my skin, people remember me easier. So I said, when I go places, people always remember me, no matter where I go. So
yeah. So you bring the cultural diversity, you bring the different color of skin, and you bring good work, right? And that's what matters.
And that's what matters. And then people remember you from that. So
yes.
I think it helps you stand out even more. So that's great. No, that's great to know.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
So yeah. Okay, go ahead. I had something else, but I would share with you.
Continue. Share.
No, so I was like, the SBA played a big role. So as you might know, we just graduated this February from our 8A program. So it's a 9-year fixed program, and there's nothing you can do to extend that. And by the time you find out what to do with it, 4 years have already gone by. So that's going back to our story of, if someone can mentor you and you can take off from the get-go, then you can really utilize the program and get there. But I think the compromise we had was the first few years, the shock, not knowing the business in government contracting really, and having lost Mike, it was a disadvantage. But at the same time, I think we were able to turn it around by getting a lot of recognition with a small team that did awesome work. So, we got recognized at the highest level. NASA, the award that we got from SBA was also because of NASA. So the SBA award for Small Business Prime doesn't just come because you apply for it. It comes because a government agency recommends that your work has been outstanding. So that was a big privilege that, we got a recommendation from NASA to SBA to say that we were a good small business. So that is how we got that award. So after that, the credit goes a long way, where people recognize that if these agencies are, sort of putting your name up, then you must have some good calls, right?
Yeah, no, you must be doing something right for them to
Yes.
recommend you.
Yeah, so SBA, as I said, has been a great, as I got to know them and as I worked more and more with SBA, I found out that it was such a great agency and they can really do so much for you. So everyone that I've dealt with at SBA has been really outstanding. And I went through the system trying to get a mentor, a SBA approved mentor, and we did that for a few years. We bid on a few very large opportunities, and SBA supported us, and that was what enabled us to have those joint ventures and MPA programs that we worked on. However, one of the biggest pitfalls that I've had, or one of the biggest horror stories that I've had are those two, because when you do a joint venture and you have an MPA approved joint venture, which is what we had, you still remain the prime, whereas you can have a larger business, sort of be your partner and use their calls. And we did, and we bid on some very large contracts, which we were extremely confident on winning.
Right.
We didn't. And we were like the runner-up, and it's not good enough, even on a large contract, to be the runner-up because you're not the winner.
Right.
However, you end up learning a lot of lessons: how to write big proposals, how to do pricing, what is competitive, all those things that you, in a smaller proposal, you don't get to spend so much time figuring those things out. But in a very large proposal, in a very large competitive proposal, it was horrific to not win. However, It was a big lesson learned. But it set us back in time because we spent a lot of time and resources focusing on large proposals, which was, time lost in going after smaller things. So there's something to be learned there, but I would probably have gone back and risked the same.
Okay, excellent. No, well, like you said, you learn from that, and I'm sure that bidding and those proposal writing, your team members now, it probably improve your smaller proposals.
Yes, absolutely. And, like now it's like that seems to be coming very naturally to us. To write something is not difficult. When you've gone through large proposals that take a year or two to write, it's very, very, it gives you a lot of, substance that you can, reusable components that you can use.
You said it took a year or two to write it?
Yes.
I never imagined that. I thought maybe
a lot
months.
of travel, a lot of delays, and once you're working with the federal government, you have to know that there's a long cycle, anyways, right?
Yes, they're long cycles. Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of effort went into two of those actually that we did, and a lot of money went into it. And our mentor was, they were a company that sort of helped us do a lot of the thinking and the writing, but the experience of being able to do it with somebody was tremendous.
Wow. That's excellent. Let me ask you this. So, how your team, when you started off, what was the size of your team, and what's your size of your team today?
Well, it was just me.
Okay.
When I started off, right? Okay. So, and now we're about 20. And then we have some subcontractors, and we work with, different, not just employees. So we've been, after the setback where we didn't win those proposals and we put all our resources in it, now we're back on track. And I think we focused on relationships a lot, where we said we don't necessarily need to be priming everything. It's all about winning. It's all about getting a team that will win. So whether you have a prime role or a sub role, one is survival, the other is to win and make money. That's what we're all here for, and to deliver quality services, right? So you have to make your name, you have to get money for it, and you have to be able to take different roles in different opportunities. So I think lesson learned was we don't put all our eggs in one basket. We spread out, we team more. And we look for teaming opportunities that offer us a swim lane where we we've got really strong qualifications, and then we shine there. So that's what we kind of re-strategized about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and I think we've been successful in doing that. And in the bargain, we also get to build good relationships with companies and work on more and more stuff, and sort of that's been a really good change for us.
Wow. That's interesting. I was reading another article, and you said that you guys made a strategic change in 2010 from where you started. So what was that change that you made in 2010 then that now, looking forward 8 years later, you've pivoted again?
Well, 2010, the strategic change was, at that point, it was just me as the company. And the strategic thing I did after I got my 8A was to bring in partners to get diverse skills in the company. So we talked about Mike. So Mike was a business development lead at Boeing. And then we got another person, Adam, who's my partner. He was into companies where he helped them build to a certain level, So it was building a company, getting all the infrastructure, everything to a certain level, so that you can figure out what your exit is going to be, or whether you're going to grow it to a certain level. So strategically, I got somebody in to do that. And then we had somebody who was technically very good. So the strategy was to have more people in the company, dilute my own equity because I was 100% owner, right? To a level where I could benefit from the experiences of other partners. And I think that was a very good move. I couldn't have done it without them. Absolutely not. And the change that I recently was talking about was from us focusing on getting prime only and bidding on those contracts, and some of them are rather large opportunities. We said we will also focus more on building strategic relationships with other system integrators so that we can spread ourselves out.
Wow. No, I think that's a great move. I think it's a great move. Wow. So let me ask you this. As we're nearing our times, and someone starting out today, if you had to start over again, what would you give advice to someone getting started that was in your position? Not necessarily an immigrant, but let's say a woman-owned IT. I mean, again, I get a lot of IT persons, 1099ers, asking about getting started in the government contracting space. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would tell them is to, know where to look, and the second thing would be to look and filter out very, very quickly, filter out the opportunities where you do not have any kind of insight knowledge about the agency or organization. You don't have any inside knowledge about where the gaps are, and you do not have the right skills to match that. So it's very important to filter out very quickly, where you want to focus. And it's better to focus on a few agencies and be persistent and get to know that very well, know the gaps, and try and be at places where you can get to know the small business office, you can get to know the customer. So opportunities that present themselves where it's the agency that you want to be seen and working in, that's where you need to focus. And that's what I would tell all 8A companies is stop bidding on everything that looks it's in your domain. It needs to be in your domain, but it also needs to have familiarity with the customer environment. That's very important. So it's very hard to just go into some space where you're not known at all. It does happen, by the way. It's not as if it doesn't happen. We got a contract out of nowhere where somebody approached us and said, "Oh, you're an 8A company. We've heard good things about you. We want to give you this contract." And we're like, "Okay, sure." But that happens once in a lifetime.
Right. Far few in between.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I would say just work with a lot of other companies that have gone through pains and find out what worked for them, what didn't, because those lessons are not recorded anywhere. And I've talked to SB about that too. I'm like, what? When you have an introductory session for the people who get an 8A or a new status, I think it would really be good to connect them at that point with not a formal mentor, but a person and a company or companies that may help them understand that because SBA is doing its business and it doesn't have time to focus on everyone. But all of us have a responsibility to give back. And I think SBA can tap that, and we're all happy to do it.
No, I agree. And SBA has thousands of companies, thousands of history of success stories that they can tap into.
Yes, absolutely. And they do it, but I think we need to be a little more proactive. And I mean, I do that. I have a great relationship with SBA. I really admire each one of them there that I've worked with. And I think we've talked about it that, we would volunteer our time and work with other companies, because that would probably give them more insight than I ever had. I didn't have that.
It's funny. A lot of companies that I talk to say the same thing. They didn't have that insight. So it seems to be the common theme that everyone is stuck trying to figure this thing out, and you spend a lot of time where you could have been actually executing and performing great work. You were spent trying to figure out how to navigate the government marketplace.
Yeah, and one more thing I'd like to add here is that, the other thing was I was a billable person. For the longest time, for the first five years, almost 6 years of my, a day, I was a billable resource. And I think that though it was very important for the company to get that revenue, and it was important for me to have that customer insight, but what it took away from me, I wish I had thought about this earlier and we could have afforded it earlier, is that you have to sit on a backseat where you have limited interaction. You do have interaction with customers, but you don't spend all your time there, because you will not be able to grow the company that way. You have to have, and there's no better business development person than the owners of the company. We've hired business development resources and all. Because of the government cycles being too long, you can't even blame them. They're great people, but you don't have unless you have the back end resources to support those for at least 2-3 years. It's not fair on anyone. So I think that lesson learned was I should have not been a full-time billable resource.
Right.
There was no point in hiring resources where we couldn't afford to keep them for the next 3, 4, 5 years. It was not a short-term thing that you could think of. And the other is have a foot in the door, though, so that you can have some sort of a face time with customers as and when. So I think that's important. A lot of 8A companies that I've been introduced to right now, all of them, the owners are completely billable. And I just keep thinking, when is it going to be that they will realize that they can't do that? It's not going to work,
No, I could share in your sentiments. I see that a lot of the owners are, they're workers. And so whatever business they're in, they're on the site, they're doing the work, they're actually overseeing the responsibility of executing the contract, which has nothing to do with business development. And so they're missing out on the business development side, which is going to keep your pipeline flowing and keep contracts coming in the future.
Yep, Eric. And the other very valuable thing I would say is if you find a good resource to replace you technically in terms of, what you're doing for a customer, you have to pay big dollars. You have to do that. That is what you're going to have to sacrifice. So there have been times in my company where we've had to cut back on management expenses so much, and yet we want to keep the people that are providing good value to us so that they can stick around, they can be here. We value them extremely well, and realize their value extremely, with entire sincerity, and we feel that these are people that are the most valuable resources the company has. So it's okay to spend and be able to keep your folks happy rather than take home an extra dollar,
Right.
So that is something it's very critical to understand that, in the long run, it doesn't pay off. If I take more money home and I try and keep my resources as cheap as I can.
Right. At the minimum. Wow. It's funny. I'm sure people tell you this all the time whenever you speak. It sounds like you've been in business for 30 years. But yet, when we look at the number, you've only been in business really about, 8 to 10 years?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So where did you get this experience from? Was there any resource that you used, any books that you read? Did you take a class? Where did you learn this from?
I've learned for actual the starting the business.
To running the business, to running the business
Yeah.
and having the insight that you have.
Yeah, so I think it's one an entrepreneur is really somebody that is born with those traits. I think I was always an entrepreneur. Running a business in the United States when I moved here was something that didn't come very easily to me. I had to learn through, I had to go through the ropes and learn how to do it. And I got some partners that knew finance and accounting and growth, but not government contracting necessarily.
Right.
So we spent a lot of time learning all that. But I think that working hard and being good at what you do sometimes gets the eye of the person that needs to give you that contract. That happened in NASA. I was doing whatever I went in to do part-time, and I think we were doing such a great job that NASA approached us and took us on as a small business instead of a subcontractor, which was great. So I think there's a mix of things. There's you have that spirit in you of doing business and being an entrepreneur, and you learn from experience. You do all the management courses and everything that I've done hundreds of courses all my life. So from technical expertise that you get through certain things, through PMP, through Scrum trainings, and all that. So you have to do all that. You have to be aligned with whether you're doing life cycle development. Now the world has gone to agile, it's gone to DevOps. You have to keep up with the current times, and you have to be a leader. I think that's very important, where your team looks up to you for guidance and for being there for them. I went through SBA training. They have a
7J.
They do a yearly thing on leadership for business, and so I attended that last year, and I was very lucky, where I felt that some of the things I came back from there were just basics. What is my elevator pitch? What is the most important thing to my business? These are basic questions, but entrepreneurs and people who are doing their own business need to ask themselves those questions constantly. And they're simple questions, but the answers are not simple in what you believe in. So one of the biggest thing that I came out of there was my vision was to have, basically a company that does very well in the space that we are technically growing. But also the most important thing was that we want to take people that matter to places that matter. And that became our motto internally for our employees, that we just want to help every one of them grow. And that is why I'm very keen on making sure they do some kind of training every other quarter or something, and they keep growing their skills. And I think that's means the world to me when I see people that we've been trying to grow, and go to places.
Wow, that's incredible. That was actually, it feels like you closed us out with that piece. I really enjoyed that last segment there.
The last one was we take people that matter to places that matter. Right?
Wow, take people that matter to places that matter.
Yeah, that's what I would want for all of the people who work with my company, and of course to deliver the above excellence. So we're very proud that our customers give us very good reviews, and feedback is very important. So that's another thing I would keep telling people that I work with, is you must get feedback from people who you're providing services to, and that's most valuable for yourself, and it helps the entire company grow.
Wow. That's amazing. And now I see you're doing work. You're doing volunteer work over in Pakistan. I think you were part of a keynote speech for a cancer foundation.
Yes, I do whatever I can here, and for any other organization in the world that is doing some good. This is one of the organizations that was known to me. We did that. I've been associated with other organizations. One of them is Open. I just did a mentoring session with them. Open is an organization of entrepreneurs, and it's a constant effort. Their mission is to, entrepreneurship, to promote entrepreneurship in all of North America and some other countries and Canada. So we have a good network. It's an organization that gets, people who've got a story to tell, to come in and talk to everyone else. And sometimes we hear really good speakers. I've been lucky to be the president of that for a few years, and I was able to showcase just brilliant stories of growth. And I was very proud of my executive team that worked with me, and I hope I was able to mentor them and help them grow to that next level too. So these are very important. They give you, a different flavors in your life that help you grow better and become more wholesome, I would say, and it's great to hear other people's stories and how well they've done.
No. And that's part of what we're doing here, is sharing other people's stories and how well they've done, and hoping that we can encourage the future leaders of America coming up and the future entrepreneurs that want to get into this marketplace. We know it's not easy. It's a challenge. Like you said, there's long cycles. But I think that, hearing your story, hearing the stories of others, being encouraged, especially, I think, for yourself, particularly coming from a place like Pakistan, migrating to the United States with a family, I think that says a lot. Because, again, I get people that, and I hate to say make excuses, but they find reasons to say why they can't as opposed to, why they can. So I think that you are setting the bar and showing people that, even with some external circumstances, like you said, if you do good work, if you put forth your best effort, if you try, if you are a high quality person, individual, that, things can start coming together for you. And I've seen that in a lot of people's stories.
Yes, absolutely. I totally believe in that. And I think that diversity adds so much more weight when you have in a country where you have all different kinds of people, race, color, religion, whatever, or no, none, and you're talking ambassadors of your people, and you become good examples of where you are and where you've been. So I think that's so important to me, to hear people's stories coming from different backgrounds.
Wow. Well, that's all the questions I have for you today. Is there anything else that you want to say before we close out?
Eric, it's been a pleasure, and I'm one of those where I just love meeting people, and I think that's who I am. So I become like a little. So I have a Sufi story where I feel that I'm like the whirling dervish, right? You know what that is?
The what?
Those it's movement, right? It's movement that takes me to that nirvana, to that place where I am. But it's all because of what I receive. So I have to become the medium of receiving and then giving. So that's my life story. I listen, I hear, I see, I love, and I know that I'm only the medium. So I hope I can pass on whatever I get and more to someone else somewhere.
I think you did that today. In today's story, I think you did so much.
Thank you so much, Eric. Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for coming on today. Same here. It's a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Okay?
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Good luck.
Thanks for listening to that episode with Narjis Ali of Sure Secure Solutions. I hope that you guys were able to take something from that. She's an incredible woman who's inspiring emerging leaders as she goes along in her quest, growing her business. I tremendously, I couldn't thank her enough, because as someone who traveled from another country to America and then built up an IT firm, which is super, super competitive, I was grateful for her wanting to give back and let people know her story and the things that she went through and how she grew her business. If you guys enjoyed that episode, make sure to subscribe to our podcast, Govcon Giants, on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, wherever you're listening. Also, please give us a 5-star review in iTunes, as this will help expose our show to more listeners, expanding our reach, attracting even more top-notch people to interview. Again, we're looking to fill in the gaps in what's missing from traditional learning and provide even more wisdom and insight for all of our fellow giants out there. Leave your comments and feedback below. Let me know what you learned from this episode, what you're working on, what you continue to struggle with. And again, something that you've tried may not work. Until next time, we'll see you again.